Phoebe is, and who loves to guide people to move beyond the limits and into the life of ease and possibility. She's from British Columbia. Another career she has is classic singer. I thought you could maybe do that for us today, huh? An added bonus for us all. Although she still sings, she spends most of her time working with adults and children to resolve their chronic pain and other limitations. She loves spreading the word about neuromovement and making the world a better place in which to live. Please help me welcome Phoebe.
Thank you so much for having me here with your group. And now the lights will come on. So I'm recording myself, so I'll have a record of the things that I said, so that later on I can send you notes if you so desire. My name is Phoebe, as Dan says, and thank you so much, Dan, for facilitating me coming, and for Karen, who put me in touch with Dan to come today to speak with you. So as Dan said, I'm a neuromovement practitioner, and I'm so excited to speak with you about it. I understand that you're a curious or an interested crowd and interested in new ways of thinking and doing and being. So I'm very pleased to be speaking with you today. Now, I came to neuromovement after I had an opportunity to in my life, at some time in my life, to be able to study something new. And I thought, what would I study? I have this window of time in California, from British Columbia, in California, because my husband was going back to school. And so I did some soul searching and wondering about what it is that I am interested in, other than singing, and what would be a good complement to what I already do. I was living in Berkeley, and if you know anything about Berkeley, you know that you can study just about anything in Berkeley. It can be as crazy or as normal as you want, and you can study it there. So I searched around on the internet about something that I was really interested in, which was the capacity of the brain to change. And I came upon neuromovement, and I dove in and studied it and became a practitioner. It's a bit of a short story about that. Now, I'm wondering from you, do you have anything in your life which you feel where you feel you are limited? Yes, I'm seeing some nodding. Yes, so is it something maybe physical, something maybe emotional, something maybe organizational, something? Everybody can think of something in their lives where they have something which they wish they could overcome in some way. I want to tell you something. Everything that you do is something you have learned. Everything that you do is something you have learned. Now, why is that? Why is everything something we have to learn? It is because we as humans are the species that are born with the least amount of pre-wired intact brain. When we are born, we have no voluntary capacity. We have maybe low 30% of brain wiring, and everything else is something we've had to learn to do. How do we do that? We have concepts about how we learn. Does anybody have any ideas of how we learn here?
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Or vision. Experience.
Keep doing it till we get it right.
Keep doing it. Hearing. Reading. Example. Maybe mimicking. Repetition.
Real life experience.
Fundamentally, what is going on with all those things?
Reading pathways in our
Reading
brain.
pathways. So how is that done? How are the pathways created? We go to school for many, many, many years, and nobody ever talks about how it is that we learn. I realize I went all the way through high school, so that's 13 years if you count kindergarten. And then I did a bachelor's degree, that took me 6 years because I did half of one and then I did a full of another one. And then I did a master's degree. Nobody ever talked about how it is you learn, you just do it. But if you figure out how it is that you learn, you have like a magic power, because you can implement that how into any area of your life that you want to change. So, I'm going to tell you. So you don't keep having to wonder, but you know, actually wondering is a really beneficial thing, because it gets your neurons going, gets you wondering, what is it? What is she going to say? What's the answer going to be? The answer is this. The basic unit of intelligence is the capacity to perceive differences. The basic unit of intelligence is the capacity to perceive differences. If you can't tell the difference between an oval and a circle, they're just round shapes. If you can't tell the difference between this length and this length, they're just a distance apart. If you can't tell the difference between one person and another person, they are people. If you can't tell the difference emotionally between somebody who's really very excited and somebody who's like crazy, they're the same thing. So how it starts right from the start, right from when you're born, and actually you're doing some learning in utero as well, but it starts right from the beginning. So the beginning is telling the difference between it being dark out and it being light out, it being hungry, being not hungry, being tired, being not tired. This is my mom. This is not my mom. This is my mom. This is my mom's sister. It's a little different. It's like closer, but I can tell the difference that this person is suspiciously like my mom, and yet she is not. This happened to my own children. And so it starts right from the beginning, being able to perceive one thing from another. And as we grow and as we are exposed to more and more things, we have more and more capacity to be able to tell differences. Now, the job of the brain is to put sense in the nonsense that we are born with. This world of possibility in our brain for making connections. And it's to make order out of disorder. Because when we're first born, we can't even see, right? We sort of have a concept of that, and you buy baby books that are in black and white in very stark differences of black and white. Same color, same shapes, maybe not. But they're all about noticing differences and having more capacity to be able to notice differences. So it's very clear, one is black, one is white. Now, the neural movement is a method in which we can optimize our capacity to perceive differences. What is it that we are doing when we are first learning, when we're first born? We are starting to notice differences. And how we are doing it is through movement. Movement is the language of the brain. And movement can be physical movement, it can be cognitive movement, and it can be emotional movement. So movement is the language of the brain. So when you see a baby who is lying down on the floor or in their crib or even in your arm, they are doing all sorts of little tiny movements. They look like they're random nonsense movements. They're just kind of flailing and moving themselves around. But all of those movements are gaining pieces of information. Brain is an information system. It's not a mechanical system. It is a dynamic informational system. And the job of the brain is to gather more and more information in order to be able to perceive differences. So, the conditions in which the brain functions best are codified in neural movement so that we can replicate them in order to mimic the movement of when we're first learning so that we can learn something new. If you are wanting to learn something new, you need to engage these conditions in order to do so. We have in our culture notions of how we get ahead, notions of what's going to further us, how we are going to succeed, what's going to be best for the activity that we're doing. So I printed some of them out so we can review them together. No pain, no gain. So there's more than sporting realms. This is a concept that have you heard of no pain, no gain before? Yeah. That this, if something doesn't hurt, or if it's uncomfortable, you have more chance to be successful. Right? This is a concept we have in our society. There's one, the same idea, the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. Gotta work hard. Working hard, just think about working hard. Go big or go home. I like this one, I've never heard this one, but I don't know how applicable it is to Vancouver and Portland, but no rain, no flowers. And the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. That's kind of clever. Life is short, don't be lazy. Work hard. So all these tell us that if we want to do something, we need to put effort into it and put power into it and go fast. Was there something about fast? Maybe not. Go fast because people who are really good at something like Olympians or athletes of any kind, they're going fast, they're going big, they're going hard. Therefore, if you go big, if you go fast, if you go hard, you will be successful. The brain, I'm here to tell you, the brain does not work like that. The brain works in a very different way. If you don't know what you're doing, you can't do what you want. Everything you do is something you have learned. In order to learn something, you need to do something different, or you need to be able to perceive one thing from another. I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, another brilliant quote for this particular method. So, how do we introduce new information? First of all, we pay attention to what it is that we're doing already. This method, neuromovement, has 9 essentials for waking up the brain and bringing about change. And I'm going to tell you about 3 of them, and then we are going to put them into action, and you are going to get to experience what it means to use these essentials in your own brain. So the first one is movement with attention. That means paying close attention to what it is that you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you can't do what you want. The second one is to go slowly, to move slowly. Because you have more capacity when you go slowly to be able to perceive things. If you're going quickly, you're only able to do what you already know. If you're going quickly, you only go down the route that your brain has already gone. And the third one is to go gently. Use subtlety. If you go hard, then again, you're only going to go down the route you already know. If you want to do something differently, if you want to get over your limitation, if you want to get over your pain, you need to go gently. Okay, so we're going to, and you do not need, I'm not obliging you to participate in this experiment, but I'm encouraging you to try it out because it's kind of interesting. So, I'm going to guide you through a little movement experiment in which, and you will be paying attention to what you're doing, you're going to be going slowly, and you're going to be very gentle with yourself. Okay? If at any time you feel pain, or if you don't want to do it, do less, not more, do less, so your brain can start to reconfigure, to make new connections. I love that you're both professional connections. It's like you're like a brain together making new wiring. It's great. So come up out of your seat to stand up.
Slowly.
Noticing what you're doing is really great. Now, maybe come away from where your chair is. Come to the side of your chair so you have a little bit more room, especially because you're between these tables. And what I'd like you to do is, again, go slowly. Maybe some of you have been to the gym already this morning. Just get that notion of the gym out of your system, because it's not about increasing your muscle mass or achieving, okay? So the first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to bend your knees just a little bit so that you don't have them locked. And I'd like you to do the thing that is called, but don't do it, the thing that is called touching your toes. What I want you to do is to bend over to see how far you get towards your toes before you feel like you'd have to push a little bit in order to go farther. So only for when it's very, very comfortable, very, very comfortable. And if you go slowly, you'll be able to perceive more, and if you go gently, you'll be able to perceive more. So I want to be really honest with yourselves. It's not about anybody else in the room. It's just about paying attention to how you are right now. Okay, so you may proceed slowly and gently. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. And just take note of what it means for you to do that. And after you've done that, come right back up. This is just to see how far you go for where it's comfortable. And notice how you came back up. The people who came up very quickly. But maybe we can come back up slowly as well. Okay, so that was just a little to see where you are. Okay, that's a reference movement. Now, in gym class or at the gym, what would trainers start to tell you about how you could better this movement, that you could get closer to your toes? Repetitions. Stretching.
Cause a little pain.
What's that?
Cause a little bit of pain.
Cause a little bit of pain.
Push through.
Push through. Okay. Well, that's out the door. Okay. Now we're going to go for information. This is going to be an information session. Okay. So now, if you're comfortable doing this, bend your knees a little bit, maybe even a little bit more. Put your hands on your knees so that you can lean with straight arms into your knees. Now, if that's a problem, you can also lean on the table in front of you. But either one, whichever one is more comfortable for you, we're looking for your comfort here, okay? We're always looking for comfort. Brains love comfort, okay? So lean into your knees with straight arms and start to round your back. And then go through to start to arch your back. And just do that a few times. So that means tucking your tummy in to round your back, and then to arch your back, you might push your belly out. And you're leaning into your knees as you pull your belly in, and then you push your belly out as you arch your back. A little help, I can always come around, but continue to see what do you feel about what you're doing. How much is your pelvis moving? And if you need a break, stand up and take a break. Okay, everybody stand up because you're all doing so great. You're all doing a beautiful job. Notice how that was different than maybe what else you've done today, right?
Yeah.
That was just a little bit of feeling into what you are doing something that's new to you. How do you and notice how your brain reacts to that? Being asked to lean into your knees, being asked to arch your spine and round your spine. Let's do it one more time, or another time of the same movement. So bending your knees a little bit so that you're comfortable, always looking for comfort, leaning into your knees, and I want you to round your back by pulling your belly in, and then I want you to arch your back by pushing your belly out. And notice where your head is in space when you do this movement. notice that when you round your back, maybe your nose comes forward, and when you arch your back, your nose comes up. And rounding your back. And arching your back, really comes out. And notice if you have a concept of your spine when you do this. Notice if you have a concept of the movement of your pelvis. Notice if you have a concept of the movement of your head. And leave that alone, come to stand. Excellent. You guys are amazing. You're so willing to do new things. You're interested in learning something new and you're trying it out. It's awesome. Okay, next movement. Take both your hands, bend your knees again a little bit, take both your hands and put them on your right knee. Okay, so you're leaning both hands on your right knee. And I want you to do the same thing, so that you're rounding your back, where your tummy's coming in, and then arching your back, where your tummy's coming out. And notice it's different. Notice the difference between doing it on one side versus having your hands equally, your weight equally on both your legs. So notice what it's like on this side. And get really interested in, just on the one side that we started on, get really interested in your reaction to doing the movement, your reaction to the instructions, your reaction to being asked to go internal to figure out what it is that you are actually doing, maybe your concept of success or not. Notice if you want to push through, notice if you want to stretch. Just notice what it is that you are thinking while you're doing this. Leave that alone and come to stand. Feel your breathing. Notice that as soon as I mention breathing, you take a bigger breath. Just the concept of it becomes like, oh yeah, breathing, my lungs, right, that. As soon as you become aware of it, you can do something about it. Now, again, bring your hands, two hands together, bend your knees a little bit and bring them to the other side, and again, round your back, and then arch your back. Now notice what moves farther. Is it your head that's moving farther or your pelvis that's moving farther when you do this? Is your pelvis moving at all? Is your head moving at all? Is your spine rounding? Is your spine arching? Are you able to go slowly? Are you able to go gently? Do you have a fixed concept of how this is going to go? Are you looking for new information? Every time you do it, it's another approximation. And every time you do it, you are looking to see if something's different, or if you can perceive something about the way you feel, think, understand, or move, and move. And then come up to standing. Now, stand back from your chair again. And I want you to do the reference movement that you did at the beginning, which is to move your hands closer to your feet. So touch your toes, okay? And I want you to do it slowly and gently so that you can feel if there's differences now between the first time that you did it. You can see if it's easier to go down, you can see if you go farther, you can see if it feels more fluid, if it's different in some way. And then come back up when you're ready. And then you can went further. Anybody notice other differences in themselves? Further for you too? Easier? See some nodding. Sometimes it's hard to tell. If you haven't really checked in with yourself for a long time to figure out where you are, other than, oh, my back hurts, oh, my neck hurts, oh, I'm not happy in this realm in my life, whatever it is, that it just has a sort of a block of pain. Come to sit down. So we have in that simple method, so we didn't do any stretching. Hopefully people were not like going into their pain, if it was painful. What are some of the other things you'd say that a gym teacher would tell you to do? If it doesn't hurt, it's not doing its work, or that kind of thing. So we didn't engage in that kind of pushing, or in those instructions. And then what became easier to come closer to your feet, and it was perhaps easier to do that. So, how much time do you have? Okay. So, does anybody have any questions about that right now? Okay. I want to give you a little metaphor about how information works. I like to think about information in the brain is like pixels in a digital photograph. So if you think of photo resolution, sometimes you see a beautifully clear and clean and precise photo, and it's this size. It could be your like profile pic or something. And then you blow it up in order to use it on a bigger piece of paper, and it's like not there. It looks like you, but you're kind of like, there's less differentiation about your nose or your eyes. Your eyes don't seem clear. It seems like it's a bit of a muddy mess, right? And if you blew it up to an even bigger picture, it would be an even muddier mess, right? So what is missing from all that when it was there when it was this size? It's the number of, the amount of information that's available is the reason why. And so I like to think of something like pain or other limitations. It is when the picture is really big and there's not enough information in order to make it very clean and crisp in the picture of you, right? So the interesting thing about adding information is that when you have a beautiful picture, say if you think of before digitalization, those French pixelism, that's what is it called, right? The art form where it's like little dots that make up the whole picture, which is basically what digitalized photographs are. But it was done in painting form. So if you think of it in painting, you think each of those colors could be rearranged to make a completely different picture. So it could even be a picture of one person that could be completely rearranged to make actually a picture of a completely different person, but just rearranging those pixels, those little dots. And the same is true for in our system, in our brain system, in our dynamic way that we process information. That the connections that we make, just like the connections that you make within this group, which is a human brain system and amongst yourselves, can result in different outcomes depending on which connection is being made. Something like doing this little movement exercise is to help you to understand those first three essentials, and actually I added in another essential which you guys had no control over, which was variation. Okay, so I took you through a process of variation, which was to lean just on two legs, and then lean on one leg, and lean on the other leg, and I'm asking you to notice different things. So we did movement with attention, we did slow, we did gentle or subtle, and we did variation. And there's 5 other essentials for waking up your brain to make new neural connections and to learn something new. And I'm happy to pass those, all of this information on to you in an email of the notes of this little talk. So, and maybe I'll just pass that out right now. So how is it that we could use physical movement, like we just did, and have it affect our emotions or our cognitive abilities or our relations or other aspects of our life? Why is this applicable to other things?
Well, they're all connected.
Because we're all connected. Thank you. So we're all connected. We're one thing. And we are not linear systems either. The brain is a dynamic system, not a linear system. And as soon as we start to think linearly, we run into problems when we're dealing with the brain. If I do this with my brain and add this other thing, I will get this third outcome. It's just this outcome. It does not work like that. Because actually we do not, as people, have the capacity to do the same thing twice. Exactly the same thing physically twice. We can do approximations of the same. But every time it's a little bit different. And each time it's making new connections and it's making new possibilities. And that's why when you get really good at something, becoming an athlete, a musician, a head of a company, or you name it, you have done those things and included all the variations of what's possible for performing or in your artistically or athletically or politically or whatever it might be. You've tried out so many different things because you've been repeating, in fact you've been approximating, going to your goal so many times, then it starts to get more and more grooved. And that's how we walk. I mean, it's amazing that we all walked in here, we all sat down on chairs. We were not born doing that. We've learned how to do that, right? We don't even know how to roll over when we're first born. It's like one of the things that we, like it's the first milestone of childhood. And we've had to learn that. So, the other thing about doing it in your body like this is that you can start to notice how it is that you solve problems. You can notice your tendencies. I remember being in training and thinking, if I could just push through this part, I'm going to be able to get to my goal. And I know from the essentials of neuromovement that pushing through is not going to get you to your goal if you want to learn something new. More information is what you're looking for. But getting so frustrated, like, why can't I roll over and get on my elbow in such a way that's going to get me to come to being able to push myself up easily without extra musculature. It was so fascinating to see my tendencies that showed up in my life as a musician, and in my life as a mother, and my life as an academic, and my life in all sorts of areas. The same tendencies are showing up as how I come to move my body around. And because moving your body around is like the initial language of the brain, it's the one that we can most easily perceive differences in, and the most easily we can notice what it is that we are doing. So if we want to gain in our attention span, if we want to figure out what we are doing, if we want to change something about our lives, we go back to the initial way that we have learned things in order to do the change that will transform our lives. Thank you very much for having me.
Any questions for Phoebe?
What's the biggest change you've seen happen with their movement?
The biggest change. So one of the inspirations that I've had for going into the training was a friend of mine who had a child who has cerebral palsy. And he was born about 9 months after my first child was born. So you're kind of going along parenthood, childhood at the same rate. And I could see right from very early on that their child was different than my child. And when I started getting interested or signing up for neuromovement to take the training, all I could think about was that family and what their child was going through and how there must be something that could help them. And of course they've done all the traditional paths of physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all of the stuff that is more about fixing the child. This work is about connections. This is work about the brain and getting the brain to wake up to make new connections itself, providing the conditions for which the brain can do something with the new information. So that child, who was never supposed to stand up, never supposed to walk, never supposed to do anything, and was going kind of as he was about, anyway, doesn't matter how old he was because it can happen, it can work at any time. But he's still a child. So say he was like 6 years old when I started the training. Actually, he would have been 4. Anyway, now he walks. Now he does like walkathons at school. Now he can run. And he did rock climbing and like all these amazing things because he's had a lot of lessons. His mother became a practitioner. She saw the potential for her child and for all the other children who she comes in contact with because of her association, because her child has this condition. She meets a lot of parents who are seeking alternatives for their children. But it works at any age of your life because our brains are designed to continue to make connections, to continue to learn all through our lives. We are born to die unfinished. We never get to a plateau, a time when we've stopped having the capacity to learn. So my friend had just unbelievable results with her child. But it's not unbelievable because the brain is designed to do that. You have a brain injury, you can rewire around it.
Well, I'm highly interested in that. My child is CD as well.
Oh yeah, very cool.
So,
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
Have you worked with people with, say, OCD, Tourette's?
I haven't worked with
chemical
somebody with Tourette's in particular, but OCD would be a learned condition through some difference in something happens, whether it be chemical or situational or experiential, something happens, and that can change the way that the brain functions. But if you get the system more organized in one area, the whole system is going to be organized. It's going to have a ripple effect, and so maybe changing diet as well as, because when you get into patterns, like something like OCD, you don't recognize that you're in a pattern, then it's hard to change that pattern. As soon as you recognize what it is that you're doing, you can do something about it. You can decide to do something about it. Anyway, yeah.
How do stroke patients work with this? Have you worked with any?
Yes, it's amazing because it's just like a child with an injury.
Mm-hmm.
You know, children have intramural strokes or birth injury, and what happens in this method versus the traditional therapies of PT, OT, is that we're calling on the brain to do its own self-organizing, not imposing upon the brain some way that I think you should be able to straighten your arm or be able to speak better. It's miraculous in its capacity to change. It doesn't make the person necessarily completely typical, but everybody's an individual. Nobody's typical. Everybody has something, but I'm not saying that it's yes, it's amazing. I'm not saying that it's like you get a whole new person. I don't want to make a claim that
It's just rechanneling what is lost and making new pathways
yeah.
to making that
Yes.
take place. Is
Getting
what
the
you're
brain
really
to
doing.
do the job that it's designed to do,
Right.
to make new sense, to make sense, to make it easy, because the brain wants to do easy.
Mhm.
And we have this concept of making the brain do hard, and that's not the way the brain works.
Are we, if we're open to being curious, anything's possible then? Is it maybe the problem, maybe, like you said, in the stroke patient, possibly thinks you don't use the normal treatment, what you're saying, by retraining and new information.
New information.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that the child that I spoke of doesn't walk with a little bit of a difference than another child, but he has a new understanding of his skeleton in space. So a person, and that is like pivotal to being a happy person, is being on your skeleton and getting the job of the bones to do their job and the muscles to do their job. The bones are what hold you up, the muscles are what move you around. If you're holding yourself up by musculature, that introduces a whole bunch of limitations. If I'm holding myself by musculature, I don't have the capacity to do all sorts of things. But if I'm holding myself up by my bones, then the muscles can move me around in ways that they can't if they are already engaged in holding me.
One more.
I can also be here afterwards as well, but go ahead.
Actually, I got a good friend of mine I just found out about a week ago. She has Parkinson's disease. And she is dedicated to fighting it. I mean, extremely.
Right.
Not taking medication, but
Mhm.
I'm going to find a way to beat this.
Right.
And so, what can she do? I
She
mean,
can use-
obviously you don't know her, but.
No, I don't know, but actually employing the essentials in your daily life, in the way that you approach the world, can have a huge effect on the way disease like that progresses. There was a person in my training who, actually she wasn't in my training, she was support staff, but she was there all the time, who had Parkinson's, and the things that she could do on the floor, rolling around, being just being fully engaged in life and not letting the Parkinson's, which ends up making you more and more, rigidifies you, right? But keeping those channels open instead of going in the direction of rigidity and then finding issues with balance and then.
She rides horse, she's horseback rider and drives a truck.
She's in a good place, yeah. But actually encouraging her to do this work would be really amazing for her, especially if she's so active still. But even if she's not so active still, it's remarkable just to be able to get the system to get to a place which is off. Relaxation, we call it in our society, but basically the muscles stop so that they can do something different.